Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Procrastinator's Pit Stop. We do have another amazing guest for you today. We are with Diane L. Haworth, who is a heart-centered success coach, teacher, and author who founded the Be Love Principles after direct divine experience, integrating traditional coaching and spiritual truths to help clients find greater love, peace, joy, and freedom. With an MBA, multiple certifications, and her book, How to Choose Love When You Just Want to Slap Somebody, she shares this unique template worldwide, guiding others to heal relationships, access divine wisdom, and live more loving lives. Diane, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Chris, for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And we've had wonderful conversations in the past, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what evolves for us today.
Sounds great. And we're really excited to dive into it as well. But we do like to have an icebreaker on the show before we do that. And the question for you today was, which cartoon character do you resonate with the most and why?
It's Wonder Woman. And I will remind people that before Wonder Woman was a movie or a TV show, she was a comic strip. It was a comic strip in the paper, and it was a comic strip that my mother used to read. And she actually named me after Wonder Woman. My name originally was Diana. She changed it to Diane. But ever since then, I have just always really gravitated toward that character. Plus, I thought the whole bracelet thing was cool, Chris. Gotta admit. I thought that was pretty cool. And who wouldn't want an invisible plane? Come on.
Yeah, I always wondered how that worked because once you got into the plane, I mean, wouldn't you still? It was interesting. That's for sure.
I think that's one of those let's not overthink it things.
Oh, that's true. Like, oh, but must have made parking interesting though. Anyway, let's dive right into it, Diane. So, what is procrastination to you? How would you define it, and what does it mean to you personally?
So, to me, procrastination has a lot to do with resisting our soul's work. And what I have found throughout my life, how I work with my clients, is really helping people understand what is our ego or personality-based way we live in the world and the way we present ourselves, and what is our soul's calling. And I find when I am scared or overwhelmed, or I think this calling is too big, that's when I can find everything else to do. Maybe before I'm going to sit down and write, for example, I will suddenly think that I need to watch the last season of an entire TV show. But I realize what's happening is, for me, it's that human resistance to that calling of my soul. And so that's what it means to me.
And, we all know that there's no silver bullet or, one cure-all for procrastination across everybody. But in your experience, what's been your secret sauce to getting over it?
It was meditation, believe it or not, because what would happen for me personally, I was one of those kids growing up that always had like 6 different voices in her head. Like, don't do this. This is going to happen. Oh, we better not do that, right? I was very fearful growing up, actually. And once I started to meditate, I could discern between those fearful voices in my head, the what if guys, I call them, and that what I perceive as that real call from the heart, that wisdom that we all have. I just couldn't hear mine because my head was too loud with all these other voices. And once I could calm down through meditation, then it was really much more obvious to me. My life, I'm not going to say that I didn't have challenges, because I do. I still do what we all do. But what I found was it was easier to identify what part of me was feeling that procrastination or resistance. And I could also understand when it was appropriate, how to move through it. So that's how it works for me.
You mentioned something interesting there. There's that struggle, that pull between those two, right? And I mean, it's not that those what if guys are trying to, stop you or hurt you. It's just that they're just super loud and scared of everything. And you found that meditation really helped you to, I guess, not get rid of them, but to quiet them.
So that is a great point. I'm glad you brought it up. The way that I looked at it, those voices, those aspects of my personality, right, are really just trying to protect me. That's it. They just were trying to protect me. What if? We got to be prepared for that. What about this? And although they were well-meaning, and if people are interested in heart's work or internal family systems, this kind of idea will be familiar to them. I wanted to honor what those parts of me were doing and be able to move past any restriction, right? I remember packing for an international trip, and I was going from Virginia, where I live, to London. So it wasn't the Antarctic, okay? I was going to be over there for a week. And when I looked at what I was packing, I could have been stranded on a desert for 3 months with no problems. Now, that was a little overkill. I kind of was listening to those guys a little much. So I had to settle down using breathwork, meditation, journaling. What is it I really need? What am I being called to do? And how much of this particular arrangement was really just my fears? It also brings up trust. As I get deeper and deeper into aligning to that real self, then I can more and more, not 100% there yet, but I can more and more trust whatever I need is going to be presented for me. And that's it. And I don't have to then, that's my ego trying to figure out all of the 50,000 things that could happen when I'm on a trip or I'm getting ready to do a podcast. But if I trust that that energy that's in me, that's in you, already knows what to do. Before this, right, I was just sitting and saying, just use me as an instrument. Let me say what this particular audience, what Chris and his audience need to hear. And then I didn't have to really worry about it. And I don't worry about it because for me, it's just fun. That's what brings the joy back. Now that is a wonderful release from procrastination, at least for me. Going from that worried, constricted state to this more open, expanded state. Understanding stuff doesn't always work out. Certainly doesn't work out the way I think it's going to. But I am loved and supported no matter what. And it took me a while to get there. I'll be real honest with you.
Thank you for sharing that. And that's definitely something that everybody can relate to, that whole needing to trust, but at the same time, we have this major need for control. When we relinquish that control, I mean, that is when, at least as I guess you've explained it as well, we can get that sort of divine message or that divine wisdom, as you did with the Be Love principles, correct?
Yep, absolutely. Sometimes my guidance will be, get the extra insurance policy on that flight. I was supposed to be vacationing in Assisi, Italy in March 2020. And something really strong in me said, get the insurance, which turned out to be a great move. So it's not that there aren't safeguards in place, but what I try to do is listen to this pull from my soul instead of the push from my ego to make those kind of decisions. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And that probably feels differently, right? I mean, there are, do you notice that feels a little differently? Does it feel lighter or heavier?
So to me, when I am coming from a place of stress, overwhelm, fear, it's very constricted. I mean, I can feel it in my breathing. I feel smaller, constricted. When I'm coming from a place of what I identify as divine love or more divine love, there's an expansive freedom about it. And it doesn't mean I put my head in the sand and I've got car insurance, I've got health insurance, I've got all those kinds of things that normal people have. But I find that I'm not ruminating on the what ifs. That's a big difference. And that is a wonderful sense of freedom. That is a sense of freedom. And you just get to enjoy things more. Enjoy things more. You're still smart about stuff. I mean, I'm not going to walk in front of a Mack truck and go, I am protected. Well, no, that would just be stupid. But I can go take a walk. And if I am in that really grounded, loving space, then instead of worrying about, oh my goodness, I'm in the woods. What if there's a snake? What if there's a bear? Which you all have here in Virginia, by the way, that I can see that the beauty in those things. And the Be Love principles help me see that, by the way.
Interesting. So with the Be Love principles, you're talking about seeing the beauty and I guess the usefulness or the purpose of these things that tend to scare us.
It's like with the principles, and maybe we should tell people what they are. That might help. So the principles are a series of 4 statements that can be used individually or together as a process to go from a constricted ego or personality perspective to a more expanded divine one. And I'm not saying that it's bad to have an ego or personality-based perspective. What I'm saying is it's limited. So the first Be Love principle, for example, is greet everyone with an open heart without an agenda. So without an agenda, to me, means without filters, without judgments, without preconceived notions. Just how can I greet everyone? And that includes creatures in the woods. That includes the trees themselves, the environment. How can I go in there and have a unique, authentic, genuine experience? Now, I have a 1-year-old grandson, so he's doing a lot of firsts right now. And this is what I see in him. He goes to his parents, take him to a new place, and he's obviously well taken care of. He's fed, he's clothed, all of that. But he can experience a new park or meeting a new puppy with this honesty and curiosity that we just forget as an adults. And when the Be Love principles were presented to me, I was reminded, that's how we came in. We have programmed ourselves out of that. So that's the first one. The second one I received was see the divine essence in everyone and everything, which if I'm looking at my precious grandson is not hard. But if I am looking at a spider, I understand spiders are creatures of God. That doesn't mean I necessarily, want them in the bathroom with me. Or I am observing a behavior or an event that I don't agree with. If I can trust there is a divine essence there, there's a divine essence at play, whether I can understand it or see it with my human mind anyway, it helps me realize there is a thread of love going through everything. And what will happen often, sometimes it's days, hours, sometimes it's years later, that I can look back and go, oh my goodness, now I see how this beautiful thread of love was weaving all the way through my life. And I couldn't see it at the time, but I can see it now. So that was principle 2. Principle 3 is forgive quickly, completely, and unconditionally. And I got to tell you, Chris, it wasn't my favorite. Once I got it, it's not a favorite of my clients. Because you talk about procrastination, that's something you want to put up on that shelf. Oh, I will forgive them later. That's cool. I got gardening to do, or I got to do my taxes, whatever it is. So that's where I see the most resistance, certainly in myself, the most resistance, this procrastination. And again, I think it has a lot to do with protection. I have worked with people, I've been honored to work with people who have endured horrific abuse, who have been involved in crimes. And with this forgiveness piece, we're not saying that you need to not take legal action if legal action is warranted. Do whatever you need to do as a human to live in a society that's safe and compassionate. And if you can see through those first 3 principles, if you can see the situation with an open eyes, right, without an agenda, if you can see a divine essence there, if you can get to the forgiveness piece, you and I bet everybody that's listening to this has heard, when you hold on to resentment, regret, you're the one that suffers. Often the people that we can't forgive, they're not even alive anymore. You're holding that energy. And one thing that I want to just offer is that we're energetic beings, right? You know what it feels like when you're full of energy and what it feels like when you're kind of a little flat. The more resentment, regret, the more of this kind of energy we hold on to, thinking it's protecting us, by the way, that's that much less energy for joy and happiness and satisfaction that we're able to hold on to. So that third one is one that I work with a lot with my folks. And it's one that I've worked with around myself, because many times the person I really need to forgive was myself in a situation. That's super freeing. Then the fourth principle, and we'll have all these in the show notes and links, I know, to the Be Love principles, is you are the light. Remember, you are the light. You never left the light of the all. Now, if people go to my website and they look at videos, they'll see, I have a whole video on how I got these. But what has emerged for me in this light thing is that's the oneness, right? It was shown to me that's the oneness. We are all of the light. I now understand in the mystic principles, light is knowledge. And we're talking to each other thanks to little beams of light today that are bouncing off of some satellite somewhere. If you believe that you can pick up a phone and Google, what was the name of the actor in the 1983 sitcom you liked, right? You trust that there's this giant database. And we all do that. You can Google God. You can Google the God within. That essence, that light, that wisdom is in you, and you will be able to access exactly what you need when you need it. Just like my 1-year-old grandson doesn't need to know about geometry right now, but he does need to figure out how to use a spoon, a fork, and how to walk. It's all unveiled to us, revealed to us when we need it. And that is freeing.
No, thank you. Thank you for sharing those principles again. It's funny, but it's almost like our society is kind of geared, I'm not going to say in a way to try and prevent that, but it definitely makes some of those things hard. I mean, just going back over the first principle, approaching everybody with no agenda. I mean, oh my, like, and actually I'm seeing this division right now, more service to self, service to others. But it's, and I find myself doing this too. Like when I approach, like even my own spouse, like if I'm approaching my spouse, I usually have something I want, on some level, whether it be attention or recognition or attention or something, right? So it's definitely difficult for us to just go in and not have like absolutely any agenda. But I guess one way around that would be to have the agenda to maybe hold space, to maybe understand or look to see what the other person needs. I have no idea what I'm saying here.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I just want to be totally honest. I didn't receive these because I got this all tied up with the bow, buddy. This was not the case. I received them because I needed this the most. So when these first came to me during a meditation, I thought, what the heck is this? What am I supposed to do with this? I didn't know. So I was guided because I already had a meditation practice. I already had a journaling practice to take them one by one. And I noticed, just like you said with that first one, they're very simple. This is what's so powerful about the principles. And you see this idea of these 4 principles. You see it replicated in mystical studies and texts all over the world. It's not specific to me, but the process is one that I necessarily needed. That first week when I was guided to the best of my ability to greet everyone with an open heart without an agenda, I thought it was nuts. I'm like, I can do that with my grandson. I can do that with the people I love. But what about that lady that's being a real jerk in front of me in the grocery line? Or that guy that cut me off in traffic? Certainly I wasn't supposed to do that. What I realized as I consistently use them, and after I've worked with clients that do this, that there is a clarity, there's a calmness, there's a connection that occurs that helps you see things differently. Now, you mentioned your partner. What I found eventually was with my own partner, with people that I love. As much as I love them, I had my little box that in my mind they fit into. And when I started to be really aware of how can I see them with fresh eyes, with new, right? How do I see their divine essence? Then I discovered skills and talents and stories that I didn't know before. So even while I often will teach this with people who are having challenges in their life, and you can do this with anything, with a health challenge, with a financial challenge, a relationship challenge, everything's relationships. What I find is if we are putting someone, if we have an agenda with everyone, we are missing what they really are and can be in the world. And the more we open that up, the more we are literally honoring them and who they are and ourselves. the hardest thing for me to do with this was to start greeting myself in a mirror with an open heart, without an agenda, without seeing the gray hair and the wrinkles and the what I didn't do yesterday and what I should have done, in my tweets. And none of that is real. And none of that is going to make any difference when I'm no longer walking on this planet. But every person I can be loving and kind to, starting with me, that does make a difference. And that energetic ripple goes far beyond me, far beyond you, far beyond wherever we think it's going to go. Because I don't think we ever really see the end result of those generous acts. And to me, that's kind of fun.
You're right. I mean, we don't see the ripple effects often. Maybe we smile at someone, or we say hello to someone that maybe hadn't talked to anyone else for the rest of the day. Or maybe we personal experience of mine. Somebody that just gave it was a root beer in my case, right? But I was just having such a horrible experience at that time that really meant a lot to me. And we don't even realize the impact we have at times.
I think a lot of it we don't. And I think now when I actually live close to the little town where I grew up, and I just had one of my high school teachers passed away. And I remember thinking, I wonder if I told him, what a role model he was for me. Right? I wonder if I did that. So one of the things I try to do is make sure I tell people that, hey, I love you. Let me know how I can support you, or you said this and you did this. And maybe it was 10 years ago, but man, that really impacted me. And I just want you to know how grateful I am for that. I think that's one way we can support each other, because we all need support right now. We all need support right now.
And just moving into that second aspect, we tend to get into our heads a lot, and this happens. I can't really identify, if there's a magic number or magic age where, we kind of, I don't know if we call it losing innocence or we call it losing the wonder, but why do you think that so many of us, I mean, is it a society thing, do you think? Or is it just, how do we lose that along the way?
Well, first of all, I think it's innocent in the beginning, at least. And I can speak to, Western culture, can't speak to all cultures, but from a brain perspective, kids are in what's called a theta brainwave primarily until they're about 7 or 8. And if you notice, they're like my little grandson, they're in awe, in wonder, they're curious, they're happy, and when they're not. And if they're hungry, it, and if they're mad, it, but there's not a big resentment thing. You didn't give me my bottle last week, so I'm going to pout today. That they don't know that. They don't know that. And well-meaning parents and grandparents and schools and churches and organizations, they teach us how to behave. This is acceptable. That's not acceptable. And, that's pretty nice to teach a kid not to bite another kid or spit on them. Well, certain things we do need to kind of have some parameters. But what I think happens is the imagination, the wonder is what we tamp down. And sometimes that occurs in our schools. And there are some schools now that are really seeing that differently. Certainly as a result of COVID, the entire education system had to be rethought for everybody. And you had an idea of like, okay, what's working, what didn't work. Certainly the way I was taught in elementary school in the 1960s, I hope it's not going to be taught, right, to my grandson. I've got one that's 7 turning 8, and then this new little one. So for us to evolve into a more holistic way of living and teaching, and to encourage more imagination, reading more fairy tales, just having people have time, quiet time, right? I was teaching a webinar last night, and one of the things that came up is that it is imperative for us, our kids, everybody, to have this time away from devices. Go walk in the woods, go take a walk around the park, go walk your dog, leave the phone at home. I know that seems like horrific, but for the majority of my life, we didn't have those things called cell phones. and we made it through. It's very rare that you would have an emergency. And I'm not saying, don't have your phone in your car if you're taking a walk, or if there's some reason for you to, but there isn't a reason, or else there are a few reasons why you get up and the first thing you have to do is check your phone. Does it really matter if you got a like on that last Facebook post you made? I mean, it's cool, but having that quiet time to go within through meditation, through journaling, that connects you really to what's important. So I love screen time. You and I have our business on screen, and it's important that we pick up a book, that we take a walk, that we listen to music with our eyes closed, that we just sit in the silence and create space for what really we're here to do, to emerge. I think procrastination for me certainly comes with noise. Let me fill this space with noise. When what my soul is pulling me to do can get drowned out.
I really like that. And it's true, maybe, and, some of that might be that, we might not necessarily like that calling. So we just want to fill it with some noise that we do like. That's an interesting thought.
You know what I think it might be too, Chris? We might be afraid we're not up to the calling. I can assure you from my experience, there's 1,000 reasons why you shouldn't start a podcast, but you did. You listened to that calling. It's not the easiest thing to do, but you've done it. And goodness knows how many thousands and thousands of people are benefiting from you listening to your calling. I think most people, well, I'll put it this way. I know this was true for me. It wasn't that I didn't hear the calling. I thought it was too big for me. And it will always be too big for your ego. Your ego, your calling will always be too big for your ego. But it's not your ego that is here to fulfill the calling. That's what your soul will do. And it will help use the ego to learn the computer programs you have to learn to do a podcast and learn the marketing and all that sort of thing. But your ego is never going to be able to do what your soul knows you're here to do. Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense from the viewpoint, and maybe, maybe I'm a little bit off base here, but I have this sort of thinking like, if your ego and your soul is sort of inside your body, and you have like a cup, right? And it's like with the ocean. And you dip that cup into the ocean. I mean, what's inside the cup is technically vast, but the cup itself is limited. Is that sort of the idea?
So let's look at it a little different way, but I love the analogy. So let's pretend we're walking along a beach and we see the waves come up. So as the waves come up the beach, you'll see these little ripples, right? You'll see these little dots, these little dripples of water, of seawater that have come onto the beach. They were just in the all just a second ago. And they're going to do whatever they need to do, have you splash in, whatever it is. And eventually they're going to go right back to the ocean. So we're like that little drop. We're not really ever out of the ocean. Because the image came to me about the light, I like to think of it as the oneness as this beautiful, multifaceted jewel, and each of us is a facet. We are a unique expression of that light. And I actually heard Neil Donald Walsh talk about this one time. He's the one that did Conversations with God. I hope I'm remembering this correctly, but in essence, when he was trying to understand the oneness, he would walk around and he would say, that's me expressing as a small child, having a tantrum in front of their mother. That's me as a policeman trying to do their work in a really difficult situation. That's me expressing as a homeless person. It really, to me, that was really humbling to hear, and it helped me further understand the principles. I can see the divine essence in others, regardless what their physical form looks like. When I realized that's just another facet of this jewel.
I really like thinking about that. That's it's a great way to think about it as well, and actually, kind of segues into. I've been curious too, and I always say this on my show, but the third point we have is, forgive, unconditionally, forgive fast, and I guess you said it best in your book, right? How to choose love when you just want to slap somebody, right? So, um, how what are some of the ways that we can sort of learn to forget? Not forget, sorry, forgive.
Well, first of all, I say this all the time, and I just want to be very honest. If I could go to the store and get a big old bottle of forgiveness pills, I'd be the first in line. Okay. And I understand that's not the way it works. There are some things that absolutely seem unforgivable. And I understand that. I absolutely understand that. And I have been in situations where I was the one for years holding on to what I thought was an unforgivable situation. And what I found was the part of me that was holding on to the resentment, again, is not the part of me that can forgive. Once I opened the door to forgiveness and just said, show me what it would feel like to be open to forgiveness. That's all it took. Now, I'm not going to tell you it happened like that. In this particular situation, it was quite a process, but it was me stepping up saying, I'm willing to understand what it would be like to forgive. And when it happened, I have to tell you, I went from literally having panic attacks over this situation to one day waking up, having this situation cross my mind and realize I don't feel anything about that. There was this neutral energy and there was a freedom to me that came from grace, divine grace, however you want to think of it. But since I've been using the Be Love principles, I've noticed that when I walk through them in a sequence, it helps. And I'll tell you a quick story. I teach these all over, online, on stage, in classes, right, all over the world. And I had this group that I was working with. It was a mastermind, actually. And in this mastermind was a very accomplished energy healer and intuitive and writer. This person was very accomplished. So I walked them through the process. And what I did was, before we started the Be Love Principles process, as I call it, I had them to bring to mind a focused person or event, and I asked them to rate it 1 to 10. How distressing is this for you? 10 being the worst. This is the most distressed I could be. And that's just, they keep it to themselves. And then I walked them through the process. And when we got to the forgiveness part, I would say, if you're willing, bring to mind, right, that focused person and ask, how do I forgive quickly, completely, unconditionally? And if you're not ready, just ask what it would be like to feel ready to forgive. And then in that last one, the light of the all, I have people imagine they are in this beautiful, it's just like this gorgeous circle of light. And if they're willing, I invite them to bring the person or a representation of the event, whatever it is, into the light with them, not to condone behavior, not to validate anything is right or wrong, just to have the experience. And then after the meditation is over, I have them, score it again. And this particular person had tears streaming down her eyes. And she said that she had worked on this particular issue that she used as her focus in therapy. She had done energy work around it. This was the first process that had helped her understand the viewpoint of the other people involved. And that had softened her heart around the entire thing. And she saw it absolutely with new eyes. That's the power of forgiveness. That's the power of these principles and this process. That's what it is.
I like that. And, they describe it as being heavy or, having a weight lifted off. And it's not that, it's not that you're going to forget, right, per se. I mean, these things always, well, I'm not going to say always, but depending on the thing, it could come up, years after the fact. Like you said, it's just that it comes up and then it just kind of goes away again.
There's
right?
no charge to it. There's not, I mean, literally, I went from shaking and having panic attacks to just, yeah, that happened. Like literally that happened. We had a situation in our family where there was an issue that required legal action. people went to jail. So, I mean, this was a serious situation. And because I had the Be Love principles, we could do whatever we needed to do legally, and because something needed to happen. And I feel like we could avoid the long-lasting trauma, and we could greet this whole thing in a way that was healthier for everyone. And to me, when I think about that now, there is no residual trauma. It happened. I mean, I know it happened. And I know for me, choosing to move through that as lovingly as possible for me, for everybody that was affected in my family, and the other people that were involved, right, made a big difference. You know, I'm not a legal expert. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor. I'm nothing that ends in ologist, by the way. And I know from years and years and years of doing this work and coaching that some people can do horrific things out of fear. They do it out of fear. I am a student of A Course in Miracles, and we're taught that everything is love or a call for love. Doesn't mean things don't have to be answered to. But when I look at something, even some, what on the surface appears to be ridiculous actions by, even people in power sometimes. And if I can say, okay, I can choose to get really upset and I can get embroiled in the drama, and there's plenty of it, but I'm not going to be able to do anything when I'm in that state. If I can bring that to neutral and bring love to this, then I can hear what action I am being guided to take. Otherwise, you're just stuck in the mad, is what I used to tell my kids. Don't be stuck in the mad. Yeah, everybody needs to grieve, and there are times when, like, go ahead and have a little mad fit. And to help facilitate the lasting change we all want in our societies and on the planet, we need to come from a place that is more neutral, where we can hear that guidance and understand what is going to be best for all of us. Because what's best for all is going to be best for you. That's just the way, I mean, we're finding that out in healthcare and financial situation. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it's going to continue not to work until we find some loving solutions.
You said something there that was really, really interesting to me. And, I'd always equated to things that are done out of love or done out of, anger, hate. At the baseline, it is fear. But I never really took it as far as you said there, where, it's done out of love or a call for love. And I guess what that means in sort of, conjunction with that is that we need to show more compassion and show love to those actions that are done out of fear, correct?
I think that the very first place to start with compassion is always towards yourself. Because we've all heard, hurt people hurt people. The more grounded, loving, connected, aligned to that divine spirit we can be as individuals, the more that really does. I mean, it sounds weird, but really that is exactly how it ripples out into our family, our communities, in the world. That's how it works. We really want to start with ourselves and have compassion when people make mistakes, because people make mistakes. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. Sometimes when, sometimes you make big mistakes. Luckily, most of the mistakes we make, nobody's ever going to see it because it's just, it, right? But to have compassion and to see a mistake, or what we consider, like, because, right, it's going to be our judgment of what's a mistake and what's not a mistake, to see that as an invitation to love. One thing people don't like me to say, but I think it's true, is I think of love, divine love. To me, that's the intelligent, expansive, creative energy that creates galaxies, that beats our hearts, that creates all of these beautiful flowers and trees, whatever you think that is. God, universe, I call it love. That's neutral. Think of it like the sun. The sun shines on who you think is wicked and righteous. The sun doesn't go, I'm not going to shine over there. It just shines. And people don't like that, right? Because they want to decide who gets love and who doesn't get love. We are love. We come from love. We're here to live love. And one of the things that has occurred to me, and just what has occurred to me, that when we all are confronted with situations, either individual situations or societal situations that we don't like, that doesn't resonate with us, then that is an invitation from love to choose differently, to create something different. And that, to me, is how we evolve, not only individually, but as a society.
Wow, some really powerful points in there, and thank you for sharing that, Diane. We are coming up pretty close to the time here. I did want to touch on. I know that before the show we spoke about this. You've actually got a like a bundle, a B. You call it the Be Love bundle.
I do. I put together, if people are interested in learning more about the Be Love principles, I have a pretty extensive website where I have like a little video actually for each principle to help walk you through it. There's a lot of resources on there, but I've prepared for your audience what I call the Be Love bundle that has a special workbook that you can use. There's even a song and meditations in there, and that is my gift. That's my gift, and it is my joy and my honor to be able to do this. And I just thank you so much.
Well, again, Diane, thank you so much for being on the show and your time and your wisdom and just trying to bring that light to the world. And, to all our listeners, we're going to have those in the show notes. So you'll be able to get that, if you're interested in getting that bundle, we'll have that as well as, a link to Diane's website so you can, reach out and ask questions. And thank you so much for tuning in. And just remember, if you can't find that inspiration or motivation for yourself today, maybe just go out and try to be that motivation or inspiration for someone else. And we'll see you again next time.